Good afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum celebrating 17 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss best practices with machine learning and artificial intelligence strategies in the federal government. With me on today's show are Major General John Olson, Department of the Air Force Chief Data and AI Officer, Tim Persons, Chief Scientist and Managing Director, Science, Technology, Assessment, and Analytics, U.S. Government Accountability Office. Jeffrey Phelan, Public Sector Growth Lead, H2O AI. Saeed Massoud, Federal Systems Engineer, Fortinet Federal Incorporated. And Paul Dillahay, President and CEO, Empower AI. We are talking artificial intelligence. We are talking machine learning. And we have an interesting title for the general here. You typically don't see Chief Data Officer and AI Officer in the same subject, but it certainly makes sense. Tell us how that, the origins of that, and tell us the state of both of those topics at the Air Force.
Well, thank you. It's really an exciting opportunity for us. Of course, this is the first time that we've had a Chief Data and AI Officer for the Department of the Air Force. We've got a $194 billion enterprise portfolio that's really focused on airspace and cyberspace. And, given that about 80 to 85% of AI ML readiness is really data wrangling and mungling and formatting and metadata tagging and cleansing and data integrity validation, this is a synergistic partnership. So we put those two together to advance the missions of the Department of the Air Force and the broader Department of Defense. So this is the first year. I'm the first person to hold this position, but we're working very closely also with the new Office of Secretary of Defense, or OSD CDAO, and their acronym is the Chief Digital and AI Office. But together we implement and amplify those broader DoD objectives and initiatives, and we're really excited about the work that we've been doing all year and so much more to come.
It's certainly an interesting combination, and when you don't typically see it in the title, but once you start to talk about it, it certainly makes a lot of sense. Tim, you are the Managing Director of the Science and Technology. I often think about GAO, and obviously they're imparting wisdom and information to the members. What actually does the Science and Technology and Assessment organization do? And then how does the AI piece fit into that?
Yeah, thanks, Luke. So great to be here this morning with you, and especially with these esteemed colleagues. My team at GAO is focused on really the what I call the three ITs: the oversight, the insight, and the foresight with respect to all things science and technology. So GAO is classically known as the watchdog for the Congress. And so we're the nonpartisan, fact-based, non-ideological analysis and oversight, the audit arm for the legislative branch. And that is certainly something we do in terms of overseeing science and technology issues and programs. But also, really, if you believe the adages we do, that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, we really do a lot in the technology and science foresight space. And so what that means is we're looking prospectively at technologies, especially something as disruptive as AI. And that sounds like a negative term, but sometimes it's just change for the sake of how we need to do our mission. And so we both oversee AI issues in the federal government, and we're practitioners of AI, especially on my team with respect to our digital sciences and digital services oriented innovation lab. So we are doers, analyzers, and then foresighters with respect to AI because it is so transformative. So looking across all federal programs, and then also doing it ourselves just to improve the mission of oversight for Congress.
Certainly, and when your organization is doing the tech foraging and getting a lot of that insight, perhaps there is some regulations that need to be associated to that. So we're delighted to see that you all are on the forefront of examining that technology. Jeffrey, H2O AI, somewhat new to the public sector, but certainly not new to AI. There's been some heavy lifting going on there for quite some time. Give us a sort of a top line state of the state.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Yeah, we're really one of the pioneers in the space. We've been around since 2012. And to Tim's point, we're real practitioners. We're data scientists that are in there every day, really working through the practical physics of wrangling data and then really getting insight out of it. We're the largest provider of open source software in the world for AI and ML. And so typically in the commercial space, anywhere there's $1 billion analytics problem, there's a very good chance that H2O AI is running under the hood. So we really have a very practical understanding of the physics of the environment, what's going on, digital transformation. We tend to red pill our partners and customers a little bit so they have realistic expectations in terms of how to make this an enterprise capability. And I think to the general's point, once you get through all the data wrangling, you now have business leaders and data scientists and engineers that are all really trying to impact the mission now. And so from our perspective, we're experts in getting into production. 8 of the 10 largest banks in the world are using us, and particularly in areas where you have real-time sensor and data requirements. So this is an area we've just stood up our public sector practice about 9 months ago. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do is bring best practices into the mission space, but really do that with a lot of very, very practical experience, over 10 years of experience, where we can help level set expectations and communicate with all the stakeholders within the organization. Because as you're building trust and capability, you've got to make sure everyone's on the same page, the confidence levels there. And this is something that we feel we can really be very helpful with.
8 of the 10 banks certainly appreciate the fact that heavily regulated industry there, which I think helps sort of as you sort of port and migrate your way into the public sector. No question, I'm sure you're involved with many of the other regulated sectors as well. So it seems like a nice fit. And we're glad to see that capability is making its way into some much needed use cases. Paul, let's talk about Empower AI and sort of how you fit into this picture.
Sure. Thanks, Luke, and good morning, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you on behalf of the Empower AI team. We are a 33-year-old company, and much to what Jeffrey was just saying, our focus is on operational AI, meaning that we're here to try and enable our customers solve some of their most critical problems and elevate them, leveraging machine learning, robotic process automation, and natural language processing, and other solutions. We've been investing in AI for 5 years, and our business model is a little different than the traditional model I think that folks have. So we sell our solutions as AI as a service. We bundle up the technology with the domain expertise, and then the configuration and deployment, and then ongoing maintenance and metrics and monitoring of the solutions, all in one easy purchase. But really, the beauty of that model is it's simplistic for our customers to acquire. They don't have to deal with a product vendor, a third party to implement it, et cetera. So we're excited about the approach and think that the technologies that we're bringing to market are really helping address some of the customers' biggest concerns.
Right. And I love the idea of sort of as a service. That is something that is of great interest to the sort of the federal sector entities, because it's just to not have to Lego block all that stuff together, so to speak, and just be able to use the capability makes a lot of sense. An interesting angle there. So looking forward to that. So we have Fortinet on here, and some might look at that and say, wait a minute, why do we have a security company on a AI and ML show? And of course, we know why. So why don't you explain that to us and give us a top line state of the state?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is fantastic hearing everybody's perspective on machine learning and AI. As you mentioned, Fortinet is a cybersecurity focused company. We've been around since 2000, AI is not something that we just started doing. We picked up on it about 10 plus years ago. What was happening was when we're deploying so many next gen firewalls and other cybersecurity solutions across the globe, we found that the volume of malware and other threat, data coming in was just not, humanly not possible to handle. So our FortiGuard research labs, they decided to establish a practice where AI and machine learning will be leveraged quite a bit. So to handle that, they started looking at a AI-based solution, which basically gets fed with data from millions of nodes. And that led to Fortinet really bring out a solution called Fortinet Network Detection and Response, basically built in with multiple attack scenarios, billions of known features, millions of malware samples. So taking all that into consideration, now they're able to handle the significant volume of malware, be it business email compromise, be it new and emerging threats, 0 days. So our researchers, rule writers are able to handle that, write rules against that, and update all our solutions that are deployed globally. So that's where we are from an AI and machine learning perspective, leveraging it, pretty much throughout our portfolio and trying to assist and help our customers in the federal government space.
A really important piece of technology. We talk about the needle in the haystack, and we're really talking about needles in a stack of needles here. And I think the only way to deal with the adversary angle is to have things operating at machine speed, no question about that. General, let's go back to you. I can't imagine the volume of data that is being collected every moment across the Air Force and Space Force spectrum. And certainly a lot of this technology is being used to sort of distill that. Why don't you give us an example, if you will, of where you're really trying to focus your attention, maybe a program that you want to highlight here?
Well, indeed, thank you. It is a tremendous challenge, but we see tremendous opportunity in this as well, because as you've heard all the rest of my esteemed colleagues here, we're really focused on the same thing, operationalization of data and AI ML readiness. And that's really for the purpose of driving information advantage and decision advantage. So taking data, driving data-driven decisions, and then having actionable outcomes. And so as we look at the global enterprise view across the Department of the Air Force, certainly we don't have just one significant AI or ML a program. We have a plethora of them, and that's growing almost exponentially. We see data and AI ML readiness and the operationalization of that is critical, almost ubiquitous part of everything that we do, not only now, but as we evolve to the future. Some examples of that would include in the areas of maintenance, looking at predictive and preventative maintenance and the analytics to drive that. As we look at our important training areas, we leverage AI and in doing our scheduling for our air crew and aircraft scheduling. We also use it in the space realm as we look at all the imagery. We look at change detection or space domain awareness. These are hugely intensive areas. Similar to that is intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, where we're collecting a huge amount of information, whether they be imagery or other types of intelligence data content. And so as we look at these writ large, whether it's in the people systems, whether it's in the mission systems, we also look at enhancing and making our airmen and guardian that much more effective. So we do a lot of human machine teaming, and we're working as the application of that into Wingman AI. That's another big initiative for us, as well as collaborative combat aircraft, or CCA. That's the human machine teaming to add to the capabilities in a family of systems approach. So collectively across this broad spectrum, this is an extraordinary time in that we're seeing not only the nascent, incredible impacts in a positive way on our missions, but we see this as a time of growth. We're learning at a very rapid pace, and we're also applying that. So I think you've also heard this is part of our broader digital transformation, part of our leveraging the enterprise IT capabilities, leveraging the data savvy workforce, leveraging the AI ML readiness, which really starts with that entire portfolio of capabilities. And so that's what we're totally focused on in the Department of the Air Force.
Sure, we really do appreciate that. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We're talking about AI and machine learning. Sayad, let's talk about a specific program that we'd like to focus on. You all are in a unique position where you're really striped across all of these various agencies. Give us one program that you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. We all know, and as the general talked about, significant, month by month, improvements taking place. We're experiencing the same thing. We're going out in the field and finding out there's a shortage of staff, experienced staff, people with limited cybersecurity knowledge, and security operations teams are just struggling to get the right people in the right places and trying to get them to defend our country, our assets, our crown jewels. So what we've done is, based on AI and ML, we've come out with a functionality within our Fortinet's network detection response solution. The functionality is called Virtual Security Analyst. Basically, it is taking care of between 5 to 10 human security, cybersecurity experts, and leveraging this virtual security analyst approach and saying, okay, if we didn't have enough people, can we take this VSA, virtual security analyst, have all the intelligence built in, and then provide the needed help that the agencies need. If deployed adequately, if deployed in the right places, we feel that we can take care of this massively expanding attack surface. So if we can take data, virtual security analyst is deployed, we're looking at all the attack vectors, and then leveraging AI and ML, being able to identify, hey, what the threat is it a malware? Is it a downloader? Is it a type of, a business email compromise? What is it that's being, leveraged here to attack this organization? So if virtual security analyst is deployed adequately, we feel that we have nobody has a silver bullet. We absolutely believe in that. However, we feel if you have multiple layers of cybersecurity solutions placed adequately, including the virtual security analyst, we should be able to really reduce the attacks that are taking place as we speak.
It sounds like maybe even do some automated response to some of the analysis. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely, you're spot on there. Automated response, right? That's why I said network detection and response. So we're detecting the threats and responding in an automated fashion. You're absolutely right.
Right, which I know is a little scary to folks, but I think the reality is, done carefully and done thoughtfully, and done in a very calculated and measured way, it absolutely makes sense, right? To take some of that sort of it's almost enhanced RPA, if you will, off the table, so that these folks can focus on the real high order, high value type of situations that we need the humans, so to speak, to focus their attention on.
Yes,
Tim,
thank you for. Just wanted to add one more comment.
Sure.
Brought it up. You're absolutely right. This solution comes built in with a database of features that are looking at various attack scenarios or vectors. Also has a database that doesn't have anything in it, but its purpose in life is to listen and learn when it's deployed in the environment. So if it sees something unusual, it will detect it and say, okay, this is a behavior that's not normal. But is it really not normal, or is it something that's normal for this agency? So that helps you reduce the false positives. Just wanted to mention that here.
Sure. So flag it. Tim, actually, we're going to come back to you in a minute. I want to ask Paul, very interested to know at this point where you've actually deployed that sort of AI as a service. I know you all are doing a lot of work across the federal agencies. Can you give us a specific example of where you all have been able to successfully implement that?
Sure, Luke, I appreciate the question. Actually, in several instances, but our largest program, which is an enterprise digital transformation program at GSA, is an example of where that enterprise, the AI as a service model is being deployed. Our focus is really on human-centered design and trying to make our team's efforts, more enhanced, more valuable to the customer. And if you think about having almost, 300 folks on program who are, engaging in customer service activities for that agency, our goal is to just try and make that as simplistic, shorten decision cycle times, provide them with the most practical responses, all at an accelerated speed, and with greater value to our customer.
Sure. And I would imagine that, again, having this, I'll say, packaged up in a way that you can acquire it as a service. There's a lot of financial advantages for doing that from a federal service standpoint. I don't think anyone would imagine that they were using this sort of as a service. Typically, they're thinking about it sort of embedded into some other kind of service. So I really do appreciate the offering, if you will, to the federal sector. Tim, now we're going to roll up to you. You gave us a great explanation about sort of why and where you all are doing these various assessments. How about an example of where you all have been forging this technology and then perhaps imparting some wisdom to the members and then perhaps a reaction back from them? Or just tell us how this works. Give us an example of where you all have been, examining this technology and enlightening the members.
Sure. Thanks, Luke. I really do think I really like what the general laid out in terms of there's a lot of this really is about better decisions, faster decisions, more data informed decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I am a science guy. I love the sci-fi movies, but unfortunately, the vacuum that's been filled in on AI is always this apocalyptic thing. Either we're all going to lose our jobs or we're all going to get destroyed by killbots. Both of those we're very far from anything even close to that. This really is about augmentation. So I think of AI as an augmentation of intelligence and really helping with these things. So for us at GAO, we are really about converting data into knowledge, and ultimately we want to inform our members and support wisdom so that better laws get passed or better oversight occurs. And so data is the basis of that. And that's how we sort of think about our value chain and what we're doing on that. So one of the things you mentioned, foraging, Luke, of the technology, we have foraged. We're using cloud native tooling sets and things like that to leverage the power of cloud as we have transformed ourselves from an on-prem IT, or we're still in that process, but setting up our innovation lab, we're able to have a greenfield startup. So I think that in that domain, we've been able to do some incredible things with relatively little, very powerful. One example is that we've both foraged the technology from cloud native IT, but also forged in terms of taking those and making a new tool set. So we've been basically we've created our own, for GAO, our own writing style, our own version of Grammarly or a tool like that to help out. And the reason is because we have to be stewards of federal data of all types across the government. We can't send our data out as is with that system out to some unknown cloud that we have no control of. We have no idea what's being used. So we're able to, with just relatively few of our data scientists, put together quickly a prototype that understands and speaks and understands writing in GAO's way, and then helps even do sentiment analysis, because we are a nonpartisan agency. That's very important. Our job isn't to take any sides in the political sphere, but our job is to inform that. So we have sentiment analysis going on through natural language processing. We have the grammatical checking, and we also need to write to a certain level, especially when I'm the managing director of a team with a lot of really smart science and engineer types, right? Almost doing a translational service into our lawmakers who are very sharp and know their issues, but oftentimes don't know science or engineering. How do we write in such a way that makes it accessible? So that's very important to us. It's a seemingly small example, but something that with NLP, AI-enabled, data-fueled type things, we're really changing for the better how we're serving our clients.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I think I hear you saying is you're actually using AI to inform the lawmakers about AI, which is fascinating.
Yes.
So that's it's a very interesting concept there. Jeffrey, let's talk about a use case, an example, if you will. I know you all are fairly new to the federal sector. I think you have done some work in that place, but you have extensive experience, again, in very highly regulated industries as well, that there's no question those port over and make a lot of sense. So yeah, give us an example of some programs you'd like to highlight.
Well, as you can imagine, with a lot of the experience we have in the banking and the financial sector, fraud detection is a huge use case for us. So you can think of of all of the different agencies in the government right now that are very concerned about financial fraud around the pandemic. It's tax season. And so one of the things that we're really good at is helping organizations understand, and the general use the term, I think, speed of the data, the way they want to act. We need to be able to do things in real time. And there are a lot of really, really good analytics, a lot of historical capabilities and knowledge that the government has. And what we want to do is help advance that, not replace it. And so, for example, PayPal, we do a ton of work with PayPal, and they've got years and years and years of real-time fraud analytics and capabilities, yet they still wanted to improve that. And so they brought H2O to come in, and we reviewed a lot of that data. And through our platform, we're able to tune and improve that model, where they were able to get almost a 60% increase in detection rates. So when you're operating at that kind of scale and you can begin to bring that over into the government, now you're really moving the needle, candidly, right? And I think part of what we're helping organizations understand, and Tim talked about the grammar part and how they're using natural language processing. We're noticing in a lot of organizations, they're really, really good people that tend to be still fairly stovepipe. So your image and analysts are working in certain workflows and certain tools, and they've got capabilities, and your natural language processing people are similarly organized. And so there's a fair amount of time that's spent helping those teams communicate and collaborate. And what we're trying to help them understand is that there are unified capabilities. So you can combine image and audio and video analysis, deep learning, neural networks, natural language processing, big data analysis, all done in parallel. Things that an individual data scientist could never do, or you certainly couldn't. You don't have the budget to build a team out like that. And these are things that are occurring in the commercial space that we're now bringing over in to these environments. So things that historically would be only retrospective, only done in large batches, things that would take months are literally now taking seconds and minutes. And so, candidly, our challenge, Luke, is helping the data scientists understand what's going on under the hood. They've spent years convincing their business owners that they can trust the data. Mm-hmm. Now, when you go in to a data scientist and they normally spend a month doing something and you can do it in 10 minutes, the first thing they want to do is they want to trust your results. So it's really interesting to see that dynamic. And so what's great is we're completely white box, totally transparent, go through the math. And I think helping organizations and the government understand we can move much more quickly and robustly is what really is what's been exciting. I mean, people get really, really pumped when we're able to walk them through, show them what the art of the possible is, and help them punch through some of these bottlenecks. So getting them a low code, no code capability. So, quickly we had a use case with some folks in the DoD where they had teams of people working for months to build models, and we were able to come in and effectively build 500 models for them in a couple of days. And this completely changed how they interacted with the data, how they interrogated it, using the no-code, low-code environment to now drop demographics out very quickly, have dashboards, and communicate results. So this is exciting. And, you've got these problem sets, both in the Air Force, the DoD, the stuff that Tim's doing. We've done a little bit of work with Taka, Riga, and that team. That's a really smart group of folks, and they're doing a lot of really interesting things most people don't know about.
Right, sure. And a lot of good use cases there. And we really do appreciate all that getting ported in again from the private sector into the public sector in the most needed area. General, let me ask you about your priorities for this year. You have a lot of different moving parts going on. I know there's got to be a top 2 or 3 priorities that you absolutely are trying to achieve in regards to AI for this year.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that question. Well, as I said before, our North Star, our absolute North Star driving vision is to operationalize data and AI ML readiness for information and decision advantage. But what does that really mean? That means becoming a global leader in responsible AI and the ethical application. We view this as the 3 R's: responsible AI, robust AI, and resilient AI. And I think when you look at the national security, the integrated deterrence environment, and the warfighting capacity that we must have as part of our broader mission responsibilities, those 3 R's of AI, again, responsible, resilient, and robust AI, those are essential to succeeding in this foray. We're aiming at AI readiness by 2025. And again, that is having a digitally savvy workforce, having the training data sets, having the enterprise IT, all the associated foundational training and readiness and infrastructure elements, and then putting it to play. And that's also then focused on AI leadership and being AI competitive in 2027. And that nicely aligns with our Secretary of the Air Force operational imperatives. He has 7 that has laid down the vanguard, the future capabilities that are absolutely essential to compete and win against against the global competitors and adversaries that we must be prepared to execute our missions against. So this is really the context that is driving everything that we're doing. We're laser focused on that. We've seen a significant increase, not in just funding, but also personnel. But we view this as an absolute team sport. So as you've heard, this is an industry and an academia and an interagency effort. We believe that tying together all the joint services, expanding to and across the whole of government, but most importantly, it's a whole of nation approach. And that's tying in the rich capabilities, the incredible intellectual capacity, the diversity, the entrepreneurial and innovative capacity of our industrial base in the United States and across our international partners and allies. So that's really our focus, and we're working diligently on that every day. This has got the view all the way to the top. The Deputy Secretary of Defense has AI ML readiness and responsible AI as the #2 defense priority, and our Secretary of the Air Force and Undersecretary of the Air Force are also absolutely focused on this as an enterprise ubiquitous capability that we must have to succeed.
No question that you've got an absolute laser focus on the North Star, and we really do appreciate that. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about AI and machine learning. We're going to start talking about priorities and teeing those up. And Paul, let me start with you. Top priority for you all this year?
There really are 2 priorities for us this year that we're focused on. One is helping our customers with the challenge of adoption. And Tim mentioned earlier some of the concerns around is AI, going to replace the existing workforce? And what I think we have to really help our customers understand is the augmentation aspect of what we're really trying to do. And that it's really trying to empower the humans to do what they do best, those cognitive decision-making aspects of their life, as opposed to the remedial tasks. And so to the extent, whether that's gathering data, processing transactions, we really want to help them understand the augmentation aspect of it. And that kind of fits into part 2, which is there's been a recent study that says 65% of the federal workforce is burned out, and another 49% are contemplating leaving government. And that is truly some staggering statistics. And I think you can take the technologies that are being discussed today and even take that augmentation to the next level to make it so that people are more effective in their jobs. They can address that burnout challenges that they have. And then hopefully effectively doing that, it'll address some of that attrition risk that's underlying the industry today. So I really think those two things hand in hand with the way that we go to market, focused on domain expertise and as a service, will really help our customers in their journey.
Love the idea of lowering the burnout factor. Super important. A lot of federal employees out there really working really hard, and their partners, quite frankly. Syed, top priority for Fortinet Federal this year.
Yes. So Fortinet Federal and Fortinet as a whole, we're constantly trying to make sure that security is front and center of all organizations. We cannot continue on. Basically, we have to operate with the mindset that there is a breach and, it's, the bad guys are already inside, right? So if we have that mindset, then I think we can prioritize cybersecurity without too much difficulty. So what we're doing is you need to understand and leverage machine learning, artificial intelligence based on, artificial neural networks, deep learning networks, right? So you have to understand that you have a lot of data points, millions of data points, right? You have to feed your engine, your AI engine, with all these, data points, and then try to figure out what are your actionable items. So what we've done is we've taken this approach and we're trying to go out to our customers and make them understand, as Paul mentioned, that, hey, we're not trying to take jobs away, but we're trying to bring in AI to help you get to the verdict, get to detect and respond. Just imagine, you have 5 analysts sitting there trying to figure out what to do with these 100,000 files. What we have a solution that can detect and provide you a verdict of 100,000 files per hour. There is nothing out there that can help you do that. So with this in mind, our priority is basically very, very straightforward. Leverage the technologies that are available to you, understand how they help you, and protect your assets and protect the nation. And
do it instantaneously. I love it. Tim, top priority for you at the GAO?
Yeah, thanks. So, the top priority, there's a couple I'll mention, but the top one for sure really builds on what Paul was saying. I like how he laid out the issues. There's burnout and so on, because we feds have problems, right? And we're trying to do our job and be a greater and better federal workforce.
Got a ton of responsibility.
Yeah, and honestly, it was weird during the early days of the pandemic and working at home. I was mostly sitting around during the day and things like that, but I was mentally exhausted in a way that I hadn't expected, by the end of the day, and certainly in the pre-2019 work factor. So the top priority really is, the problem with AI, in my opinion, the number one problem is that we keep talking about AI. And here's what I mean by that is we need to shift the conversation from AI, which is just a technology or a means by which to do something, and talk about what problems do we need to solve. Because we can have, we're here at GAO, we're both at the same time a techno optimist and techno skeptic, right? So we have to deal in truth and reality and so on. And so we've built our AI accountability framework, right? We understand how to even look at this because we're going to have to evaluate this across every federal program. But all this means is that, Luke, our number one priority is really culture building on this. And it starts with trying to understand what are the problems, right? Why do we have burned out feds? And are there things in their workspace that frankly need to be done by a machine? It's going to be more accurate. It's going to be faster. It's going to allow them to be greater and better versions of themselves. It really is a human capital enhancement type approach, not a human capital drain or dislocation. So really, as hard as the tech and the data and the engineering behind that, all this is a challenge. And you need to be, again, have healthy skepticism about this. It's never going to be an easy button that you push and AI is just going to magically solve everything in and of itself. Nevertheless, we need to be able to think about AI in terms of solving our problems as one of our tools, using data-driven approaches, supporting those quicker, better decision sciences. And I think that's the kind of thing that we're focused on in our priorities. So second,
allow these finite resources to really focus up the value chain. I think it's fantastic and a nice way to reframe the thinking, if you will, there. Yeah, Jeffrey, top priority for H2O AI.
Well, I think from our perspective is we really want to help, and I'll sort of tag on Tim's point, is we want to help the federal government solve these really large problems that aren't just in one niche area, but really go across the entire enterprise of government, right? And to use AI where it makes sense and to help move really from experimentation into production, right? We're seeing lots and lots and lots of activities. People are all sort of kicking the tires and they've got different use cases. But now how do you take it out of that experimentation phase and begin to scale it and do it rapidly? And this is an area where we're the absolute leader in the world when it comes to that, moving from experimentation into production. I can say probably in our commercial practice, they're moving, new data models and business cases into production in about 2 weeks. Well, and around government, it might be 9 months, it might be a year. And so even if you can collapse that a little bit more, you're now able to really help solve these problems and do it quickly. And coming out of the regulated industries, as you mentioned earlier, Luke, having everything auditable, right? There's Tim's office has done a ton of great work around responsible AI and explainable AI, right? If a person who's non-technical, if it's someone in Congress, if they don't understand why decisions are being made, right? They need to make sure a protected class hasn't been affected or there's some bias in the model that they weren't aware of. Those types of things need to be immediately apparent. They need to be documented. They need to be audited. You have to be able to repeat these experiments and so forth. These are things that we do every day in our practice that we're now beginning to bring over. So a use case, Luke, documents, the number of faxes that are processed across the federal government and are still reviewed by humans. It's part of that workflow, understanding. In medical areas, for example, in the VA and HHS, these are very technical documents. You can't have a non-qualified person really review them and advance them. And so there are capabilities that allow you to do that. I think another one is policy announcements. Any agency, you've got anytime a new policy may be announced, it's open for public comment. Well, amazingly, a lot of that work and the review is done by humans, right? This goes to that burnout issue that you and Tim both talked about. Well, if there's a way where we can allow machines to do a lot of this pick and shovel work and review, and you have a human in the loop, you have that cognitive component verifying it. Now you're able to say, hey, we don't need to leave this policy open for 9 months, not because it needs to be open for 9 months, but because it's taking us 9 months to review 20,000 comments and encapsulate those. So for us, I think it's just helping our mission partners and agency partners across government begin to understand what the art of the possible is, getting out of experimentation, moving into production. And they don't have to leave explainability or documentation or repeatability or that audit. That all comes with the deal. That's table stakes these days. And if your technology partner isn't able to show you that almost instantly, they probably aren't able to do it. It's black boxed, and that gets everybody in trouble.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap it up. We always like to ask this last question. Saeed, I'm going to start with you. Just talk about what it's going to look like in a couple of years.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I get this question quite a bit actually.
Mhm.
2 years, 5 years, or 10 years from now, or maybe a decade later, or 20 years.
We like to stick with two. We don't like to get out there to 5 and 10 into Buck Rogers land.
Perfect. So what we're looking at is an environment where basically we're calling our terminology for that is a Fortinet security fabric. What that is basically an architecture where you have all these disparate systems, integrated tightly together so that if a threat is learned at any point, at any node, at any endpoint, be it in the cloud, at your remote office, and especially nowadays because the environment is work from anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting threats from all across, right? Your threat surface has expanded, as I mentioned earlier. So we're looking at this Fortinet security fabric where we learn of something that we have not known before. Leveraging AI and machine learning, we're going to identify that as an artifact of interest. Maybe it's suspicious, maybe it's malicious. But once we have determined that in sub-second speed, meaning usually we do that under 100 milliseconds, then we're able to then take that information and spread it across the entire fabric, the architecture that allows you to integrate all these disparate systems. When you do that, then you're able to, with near perfect, verdict, you are then able to protect your environment, your architecture. And again, it's not just being able to do it on-prem or in the cloud. It's everything hybrid. And it doesn't matter where your technology is deployed, you should be able to perform this. And having this visibility and being able to manage it centrally, that is going to be our future.
At machine speed. I love it. Paul, 2 years from now, what's it going to look like?
Yeah, so great question. I really think there's a few things that have to happen across the industry to
maybe give us one or two. We're trying to get it all in.
Yep, sure. One is reciprocity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think everybody's talking about great solutions. One of the biggest challenges we all face around adoption is reciprocity of the ATOs. We have ATOs in civilian, DoD, healthcare agencies, but getting these technologies deployed, we have a robust ethics and AI framework that's been adopted and signed off by our board. We're doing all the right things, I believe, from getting the bias out of the algorithms and everything else. We have really cutting edge advanced technologies, and we have some very basic things that just help people get their jobs done. But without that reciprocity and without some way to accelerate the security issues and being able to deploy, it's going to continue to be a challenge for industry.
Very laser focused. We love the idea of reciprocity on ATOs. We love the idea of reciprocity on clearances as well. So please take a look at that one. Jeffrey, H2O.ai, 2 years from now, you're firmly entrenched in the public sector. What can we expect to see at that point in time?
Well, I think the future's here already, Luke. And the big challenge is we sell AI every day, but most entities inside of government have never purchased AI at scale.
Mm-hmm.
And
certainly not as a service.
Yeah, certainly not as a service, which I love, by the way, Paul. We're right in lockstep with you there. And so I think part of it is making, 2 years from now, we've got the right people in the room from an acquisition and a requirements perspective. They understand the mission. There's an understanding of the technology and the capabilities, and that it's not peanut butter, that it's brushed across everything, but it's focused in the areas that move the needle, make the most sense, that can be measured, right? You need an ROI on things, and so that you can begin to look at AI in the same way you do any other program metric and KPI and things like that. So from our perspective, upskilling folks in the program management offices, helping them understand what does proper due diligence look like when you're going to buy an AI capability, right? We see there's still a fair amount of buyer's remorse, things that are generalized capabilities, but may not necessarily really apply to the specific mission need. And so I think that training and education, understanding the requirements, the procurement, and the due diligence around AI is you have to make sure that you've got people that understand the real problem set in the room. And so it's very interesting. I think we're in a similar phase where cyber was 8 or 10 years ago. Lots of really smart people using some really interesting capabilities to solve problems, and now moving into the automation phase and helping them really do that at scale.
No question about it. Really looking forward to that. Certainly the future is definitely now. And we look forward to that as well. Tim, 2 to 3 years from now, you all have fully adopted AI, and perhaps the members of lawmakers have a very good understanding and awareness of this. What can we expect to see maybe from whether it's a regulatory standpoint or the use of AI at the GAO?
On the client side, from our perspective, I think you're going to see a sharpening around AI. There's already been, for example, led by Senator Wyden, there was a Algorithmic Accountability Act, which has a lot of good content in there about just trying to run AI responsibly, which has been mentioned. So I think you're going to see legislation or activities or hearings, I think, that go around that. How do we achieve the mission or solve the problems with AI, but do it in a responsible way? And for us, that means use or informed by our accountability framework for AI, which not only applies to federal government, we would say it just applies to any use of AI anywhere you want to do that. So I think we'll see increasing interest in use in that way. Within GAO, what we are doing is we have the Innovation Lab, as was mentioned before. Hired Taka Riga as our chief data scientist, and we're moving really from a small startup phase into a more scaled operation. And so for us, it's going to be a lot of prototypes that are coming out, like the one I mentioned before, and then a productionalization process that puts it in and scales it across the enterprise. The idea being we are solving some key challenges with, be it federal burnout or just, if we're doing mind-numbing things that the human value can be expressed in other labor categories or higher functions. And that's what I think you're going to be seeing. So we'll keep moving on in our mission of de-risking, ideating, prototyping, and de-risking those things in our sandbox environment of the lab, so that our mission set doesn't have to take that risk. But we work in parallel, are highly informed by their problems. I think we'll see a lot of partnership, and optimistically, I think there's going to be a great awakening across our building about, wow, this is going to be, there's a bright future with this if we get this right, as well as what our evaluators do across the federal programs. They're going to be able to use our framework and become better evaluators as AI proliferates in the federal sector.
We're certainly looking forward to that. General Olson, would like to talk to you about what does it look like, 2 to 3 years from now? Are we going to have autonomous strike fighters out there running on AI, or what's that going to look like in 3 years from now?
Well, certainly the rate and pace of the application of both data analytics and AI, ML, and deep learning capabilities are a pervasive focus across the Department of the Air Force. As we look ahead and do a snapshot, I think the quintessential application that includes a portfolio-wide approach is both the focused utilization across our Secretary of the Air Force operational imperatives, but it's also what we call JADC2, or Joint All-Domain Command and Control, and the specific application within the Department of the Air Force is the Advanced Battle Management System, or ABMS. As you can tell, I have a couple of hats. So I am, in addition to the Department of the Air Force Chief Data and AI Officer, I'm the mobilization assistant to the Chief of Space Operations, thus the image in the background, but I'm also the Space Force lead for JADC2 and ABMS. And so when we look at the convergence of these areas, when we look at the underpinnings of the digital infrastructure, essentially JADC2 is the ability to sense, make sense, and act across all domains with the joint services in a contested environment at the speed of relevance. And I think that absolutely underscores the quintessential approach. We're trying to leverage machine-to-machine speed. We're trying to leverage the predictive and other capabilities of AI ML readiness. And we're trying to, again, make sense, and act at that high speed, very dynamic cadence that's required. So for the Space Force, that's absolutely leveraging decision advantage and information advantage by being able to leverage the information and apply that through knowledge and action at the speed of need. In the Air Force, as we look at and talk about wingman AI and collaborative combat aircraft, that's absolutely essential to what we're doing. But of course, we don't even fly without maintenance and logistics and basing. And these are really complex and challenging endeavors. And we're leveraging data and access to our authoritative data and analytics at speed with AI, ML, and DL capabilities. So these are really ubiquitous enablers. Is this Buck Rogers? Is this Star Wars? It is on the path to leveraging the tremendous capability, but it's really evolutionary, and yet I don't want to understate the rate and pace of advancement. And as we talk with our industry partners and our interagency partners here, it's absolutely essential to work collaboratively. And we think that this is a team sport and driving to deliver those outcomes at a very rapid pace, making sure that we're responsible, we're robust, and we're resilient all throughout the journey is an integral part. So I'm really enthused about the future. I think what we're seeing is year by year, actually month by month, we're making extraordinary progress. We've got a lot to do, and we're laser focused on that.
It really does seem like a sort of a hockey stick sort of acceleration of the adoption of this technology. So we really do appreciate that. And we certainly do want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for this program. And I'd like to thank the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make the program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.